And here we go. Okay, so guys, super excited for this topic today. Our craziest Airbnb stories. I would like everyone, if they're going to share a story, to back it up with a learning lesson too. So those that are brand new are not totally freaked out about Airbnb, but I'm sure we've got some good ones. Before we get started, quick panel introduction as I'm making all of you moderators right now. And here we go. Let's just get a quick intro from everyone in the group. Jim, if you want to get started, just a little quick intro, and then we'll go to Rafa and then Jesse.
Awesome. Thanks, Kyle. And so happy to be here for another great week for the STR lunch break and hearing everyone's crazy Airbnb and STR stories. My name is Jim. I've been on Airbnb since 2011. I joined when it was actually more of a couch surfing program when I was out in New York City. But the last 5 years, I've been managing and helping people primarily here in the Midwest and in the Indianapolis region with optimizing their houses as STRs. And yeah, so super happy to be here. Happy to answer any questions. And yeah, looking forward to the good discussion today.
Awesome. Thanks, Jim. All right, Rafa.
Good morning, guys. My name's Rafa. I run short-term rentals in Southern California. I've been doing this for a little bit over 4.5 years, all arbitrage. Got some good stories to share today. I'm excited for this topic.
Can't wait to hear your stories, Rafa. I'm sure you got some good ones. Jesse.
What's going on, guys? My name is Jesse Vasquez. I am a real estate investor as well as a property manager in the Central California area, and just here to add some juicy stories. So thanks, Kyle, for having me on.
All right, awesome. And we'll get another intro from Majid and then Rachel, and we'll jump right into the stories.
Thanks, Kyle. Yeah, my name's Majid. I'm also, just like Rafa, a short-term rental operator here in Southern California. And I've been doing it for, I guess, now about 1.5 years. And also I do car rentals now. So yeah, that's me.
Awesome. Always a pleasure to have you on, Majid. And Rachel, how's it going?
Hey, Kyle. Thanks for pulling me up. My name is Rachel, investing primarily in Georgia, Florida, the Smokies of Tennessee, and the Pocono Mountains. And primarily, we're in the short-term rental arena. Just glad to be here. Have stories galore. Can't wait.
Awesome. Okay. With that being said, let's jump into it. And I'm sorry, guys, if you have your kids on the call, you might want to let them go into the next room because today is not going to be PG, I'm guessing. When it comes to these Airbnb stories, I've heard some doozies. So does anyone want to start us off with a bang and share your story? Keeping in mind, again, you're going to need to share a learning lesson from it as well. So who wants to go first? Let's hear it. Nobody wants to share their story first.
I want to nominate Jesse because I want to hear his stories.
Jesse has the best stories. I swear. There's bats. There's haunted mansions.
Stories into like these like crazy other stories.
You guys can't nominate me. My 2 best stories. Most of you guys already heard. Maybe not everybody in the crowd right now, but I guess I can go. What do you guys want to go with? A crackhead story or a bat story? You guys decide which one you want.
Well, you're probably going to end up sharing both of them today. So let's start with. I think the bats sound pretty fun.
Yeah, bat story. Okay. So I manage a property out in the middle of nowhere. Basically, it's out in the Don Pedro area. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Don Pedro at all, but it's basically a big reservoir out in the middle of nowhere. And there's a property that I manage out there that's this huge, beautiful, multi-million-dollar property. And this house is, if you guys can picture it, it's basically sits on a large, like right on the edge of the water. And it's the floor-to-ceiling glass windows. So the whole entire living room is floor-to-ceiling glass windows. And those glass windows, you can actually like slide. I don't know if you've ever seen those where you can like literally open up every single portion of the house so that it's all, you can get the air and everything kind of flowing through. So I get a call, and keep in mind, you guys, like the elements, like when you host a property that's out in the middle of nowhere, like you're living in the habitat of, you know, these other creatures. Like we as humans are just happening to fall into that category there. So, yeah, so keep in mind that's part of the process. But anyway, I got a call. I got messages that were coming through. It was probably about 9 o'clock at night, and I had a guest say that there was a bat that flew into the house. And I was just basically like, I've never had this before, so I obviously called the owner of the property, and I was like, hey, I just had a guess if there's a bat flew in. And they were in the house chasing the bat around. There was kids that were there. They were all freaked out. They didn't know what to do. They realized that then a colony of other bats flew into this property. Like it wasn't just one bat, it was multiple bats. So they were running around. I don't know if you guys ever watched the movie Black Sheep. I think Kyle, you and I on your podcast, we talked about this. That image of Black Sheep where they're sitting there hunting the bat down, and you know, like flies on Chris Farley's neck, and he's like trying to get it off. But anyway, so I Googled, if there's a bat that flies in the property, you have to turn off all the lights and open one window, because bats are basically blind. They don't see. They can only hear, and that's how they can maneuver wherever they're going. So the family locked themselves into the main bedroom, opened one door, one of those glass sliding doors, and just left it like that, turned off all the lights. They got up in the morning, and all the freaking bats were gone. They all flew out of the window, but the family was terrified. I ended up having to give them a credit back, because they were basically saying, like, you know, we were locked in a room all night. The family was there. I think there was 9 people, and they were all locked into the main bedroom. Everybody was freaked out. Keep in mind, these were city folk, so they are not used to any type of elements that have to do, especially with bats. I don't think many of us are. So they were pretty freaked out by it. But the biggest lesson learned is that I realized that you can't, when you have a property that's so remote like that, you're going to have things that happen. Oh, and by the way, they kept these doors open, and guess what came in the morning? Freaking rats. So
oh God,
they opened. So they left the door open all night, and the bats flew out. Rats came in. So they basically woke up, went in the kitchen. Ratatouille was in the living room or in the kitchen cooking some food, and that's what they walked into in the morning. So the bats flew out, and they had these beautiful, gorgeous rats that then came in and started cooking breakfast in the morning. So yeah, that was the wake-up call. But what it did is it made me realize that, first off, when you have a property that's out in the middle of nowhere, and I know a lot of people have like Joshua tree houses and, you know, properties that are remote, those elements that live out there, and this made me change the listing to let people know that whatever's out there can eventually come in, especially if you have glass windows and you leave them open, and it will come in. So it really made me realize that, you know, any properties that I host that are out remotely, or, you know, I'm looking at properties in Joshua Tree, you know, if I do purchase something like that, it's something that you have to absolutely bring the attention to the guests, that they will know that if things are left open, there will be rats that come in. There will be, you know, things that come in. And now with that property, we're actually dealing with rattlesnakes. So I had somebody just check in. That's another story, but rattlesnakes are live and healthy and ton in Don Pedro. So that is my crazy Airbnb story for now.
Good Lord. Wow. Yeah, I mean, I don't have a big story about that, but just for some wildlife, I recently posted about it on my Instagram. If you guys want to go check it on my Instagram, in my highlight called Airbnb Stories, my cleaner got a squirrel on camera that was in the unit. When she had walked in, she left the door open, and the squirrel apparently got in. It got into the blinds, jumped down. Her reaction is priceless. You need to go watch that. But yeah, we had a bear recently too, Jesse, at one of our places. The guest left some trash out, and the bear came in at night. Luckily, no one went outside, but we saw him on the Ring doorbell. We're thinking about naming him something. He keeps on coming back. But we are definitely keeping trash inside now. So I think that's the idea there, right? Keep things inside, keep doors closed. Good learning lesson, but crazy story. And yes, black sheep all the way. That's all I can think of. All right, so we gotta move on to another story. We had TJ join us. I know TJ's got some stories, but flash your mic if you want to share a story next, and I'll pick on. Okay, it looks like Rafa in this order: Rafa, TJ, and then Jeremy. Let's go with Rafa first.
Cool. So I want to share mine now because I'm going to be getting off shortly. I have something to do in a minute. But so I actually had a guest who a firearm went off in the apartment, like live gun. I keep going straight. And so what happened? I got the call from actually I got a message from the neighbor saying, "Hey, we heard a gunshot next door." And I'm like, "What?" And so I contact the guest next door, and they're messaging me at the same time I'm messaging them. And then at the same time, I'm getting a call from management at the complex saying, "Hey, we heard, gunshots." And so I'm trying to figure out what happened. Turns out these guests, the guy left a gun in the oven on the bottom part. And so his girlfriend was there with him, and he was out. And she turned on the oven to cook. I guess she was putting something in the oven, and the heat set off the gun and fired the weapon through the wall into the neighbor's house where my guests were staying. Luckily, it hit a 2x4 right before it went through the wall and caught the bullet. And turns out this guy was a police officer in training for the city next door. And I had to call the police department where he was working to verify that he was legitimately a police officer. We had to bring the cops from the city where the apartment was at, down to file a report. We had to get management out there. They had to call the regional manager out there. We all had to basically file tons of reports to get to figure out what had happened and to make sure that it wouldn't happen again. That's one of my craziest stories.
Good Lord. So it wasn't the guests themselves. It was the next door neighbor?
No. So it was both of them were my guests.
Oh, okay.
So the guest that had the weapon, the girl booked because she came to visit her boyfriend, who was, I guess now he's a police officer for the city. But at the time he was like the rookie. I don't know what they are. Like they're the training guys. But he already had a weapon. And so he left his weapon in the bottom part of the stove. She didn't know about it. I guess he was just like storing it there. I don't know. Like if they're not, have holsters or something. And so she turned on the oven to cook. The heat set off the gun. Weapon fired. We had a little hole through the stove, through the wall, through the bottom of the staircase, and then we found the bullet and a little 2x4 on the other side. And so lesson learned, I don't allow people with weapons in my units. And I need to know if they're police officers coming in with weapons.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. Big lesson learned there. I had a gunshot at one of my places once too, but it was I don't know if you want to call them cowboys celebrating, shooting up in the air for a birthday or what, but it was outside. But good Lord, it was not fun getting all those texts and emails and calls from hosts or neighbors the next day talking about that. But all right. Thank you, Rafa, for sharing. I know you got to jump off. So if you do, no worries, man. I believe we had TJ next.
Oh, here we go. So good morning, everybody. Oh, man. Yeah, Rafa, that was that's an interesting one. Mine, I think I've told it once before. I think in one of Jay's room. I had a raid kind of happen in one of my houses, one of my units. It actually was the first Airbnb that I launched. It's a 3-bedroom, 2-bath house. This one I own, and what ended up happening was, I guess I had some guests that they were direct bookings, and so these folks came in, they stayed, and so one of the guests, it wasn't particularly the guest that booked it, but one of his guests were there, and I guess he had warrants, some serious warrants. And so what the police officer had a...
TJ, we're losing you.
Yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah, I got a call. So they had ended up having a raid there. What happened was the police officers, they were set up. Apparently, they were like in some undercover cars or whatnot, and they ended up sending a FedEx box to the unit. Like they placed it there, and they rang the doorbell and walked away. So they wanted to get a visual of who was inside. Well, the guy that they were actually looking for actually answered the door. So when they saw that they had confirmed visual of the person, then they raided the house, and he took the package and went back inside. And so then they kicked the door, broke the door completely. It came off completely. and then it was like guns drawn, full gear, stop, put your hands up, the whole nine. And so they ended up arresting the dude. And that was pretty interesting. And they contacted me, and I actually went over there, spoke to a couple of police officers, like, yeah, I'm the owner of the property and whatnot. And then I was like, hey, anybody gonna fix this door? They were like, looked at me kind of like, nope, yo. So yeah, that was interesting. That probably was I've had worse things happen just in terms of damage, but just as far as interesting things, that's probably the most interesting that happened in my unit so far.
That's crazy, man. All right. So I know you joined in a little bit later. We were basically talking about how if we're going to share a story, we got to talk about the learning lesson as well. So is there anything you learned from that, TJ?
I'll probably say, when we talk about vetting people and screening guests or whatnot, I think it's important to also add an additional layer for not only the person that books, but the people that are actually going to be staying with them as well. That's why it's very important to have an accurate guest count of who's going to be there. It would be a good idea to maybe possibly get information of everybody's going to be there, like a copy of the IDs and things like that. Because a lot of times if people have an issue furnishing certain information, then you probably know that's a red flag. So yeah, definitely lesson learned in terms of the screening process with that experience.
Especially as a direct booking is what you said it was, right?
Especially direct booking.
Yeah.
Yes. Especially direct booking. You want to make sure that you get, who's going to be in your units, especially if you're taking those bookings direct, because it's your responsibility to make sure that you don't have that extra that layer of the OTA. So that's definitely all on you.
Awesome. Well, that story, I'm sure at the time was not awesome, but awesome learning experience. All right. I know we've got Jeremy next, but before we get to Jeremy, a few more people up on stage here. So we're strictly sticking to stories today. We're limiting this to an hour. So I want to just keep on jumping from story to story. But if you have a story, and I want you to start flashing your mic so I can know who to call on next. So if you've got a story ready to go, we got Jana. Anyone else have a story that they're ready to share after Jeremy and Jana start flashing your mic for us? Okay, so for now, we're going to stick with Jeremy and Jana. So, Jeremy, you're up, man.
Thank you, man. Thank you for having me on stage, man. So I have a great story. It was a horrible story, but it fits the title of the room. So I think this was like a Saturday night, and our customer service team got a bunch of messages about a loud noise that came from one of the buildings. So I'm initially like, okay, yeah, I mean, it's Saturday night, so someone's probably, partying or something, right? But apparently, one of the guests said, hey, it sounds like a gunshot, like it was really loud. So, I kind of stepped in. I said, let me just make sure, everything's okay. And then I started getting more and more messages. And so in this particular building, I wanted to have like 10 units, and three of them are on the same floor where the actual incident occurred. So apparently what happened was someone attempted to, they were successful in climbing on a ladder to the fourth floor from outside, and they were attempting to rob one of the individuals that stayed in that apartment complex. So once they got in the unit, I guess they didn't realize that the guy was actually still there. So the guy, this guy was military. He ends up shooting and killing this guy, the robber. So with the I think this was I think it was an AR. So you can imagine it was very, very, very loud, and sent the apartment complex into a frenzy. So this whole time I didn't know if this was one of my guests or not. So you can imagine the nerves, man. I like literally could not stop shaking because I was like, oh my God, this is one of my guests. I am done. I don't even know what to, I don't even know what the next step would be. Apparently it was one of the residents from across the hall. So on that particular floor, I had, 3 units. So, I had some of my guests were peeking out the hall, trying to, see what was going on. And luckily for me, it wasn't one of our guests, which was great. And make a very long story short, there were no cameras in the halls. So what I captured on my doorbell camera was the actual shooter, who went and came and I could literally right in front of one of my units, passed the weapon off to, I guess, one of his neighbors, and said, I killed them. Just take the weapon. So I don't know what type of plan they had there, but I know that I end up handing the footage over to the police, and I think it helped with the investigation. But that was I tell you what, man, I think I didn't sleep that night, and later I was scrambling, trying to get something together for PR, just in case, but I ended up not having to use it. But that was a nightmare, man, as you probably could imagine. So, but yeah, that's my crazy Airbnb story.
Jeremy, that's crazy, man. I mean, thank God it wasn't one of your guests, but and that probably isn't your typical kind of situation we can get a learning experience from. But is there anything that you did learn during that entire process?
Definitely, don't take, and, I'm sure none of us on stage do this, but, don't take the security, extra security, and don't take that lightly. Some people I know try to get around with, without having a doorbell camera or things like that. Those just really, teach us, hey, man, this is really important. You cannot go, operating a large amount of units, or any unit for that matter, without having that extra security and knowing who's coming in and out of your unit at all times. In this situation, I was actually able to help the police. So yeah, definitely security all day.
Wow, that's pretty amazing. Thanks for sharing, Jeremy. And I know we got Jana next. I saw that Neil had jumped up here too. Neil, flash your mic if you've got a story for us too. Awesome. And so we'll go Jana, then Neil, and then Jim. One more time. Were you flashing your mic? Flash for me if you. Okay, cool.
Hey, Kyle Matthews flashing his mic too. He flashed it last time.
Just saw that right now too. So let's go Jana. Then if I missed it, sorry about that, Matthew. We'll go ahead and go Jana, then Matthew, then Neil, and then Jim in that order. So Jana, you're up.
Perfect. Thank you guys for sharing stories and definitely lessons learned here. We've had several as well, and we work with others that are doing short-term rental. I'm sure we'll get into some stories this weekend at the event. And the one that I think has been crazy when it comes to theft is one of our property owners in Virginia, the key fobs. People come to the airport, they rent a car, and then they have a car that has a fob. Well, the lady had gone into the property and put her purse that had the fob down kind of close to the door. And guess what? That fob still worked. Someone stole the car. So lesson learned here is some of those fobs will reach even if they're on the inside. They were able to start the car, and then, of course, had the police report and everything there. So just something that we all can learn, but especially at our rental properties, that, making sure that people, if we do have a table in the entry or maybe a bench, a mud area that we might want to put a little note or something, just information, because we don't hear that happening very often. But it definitely happened in this instance. So just wanted to share that story.
How far away was the fob from the car?
That was only, I would say, just right on the inside of the back door, like the garage door, into, them parking right outside of the garage. So not very far at all. You wouldn't think that it would reach, and I'm not sure what type of car it was, but they definitely were able to get inside and steal the car. Wow.
Smart car was not smart enough, huh? That's That's wild. Thanks for sharing, Jana. And great learning lesson there too. All right, we got Matthew next.
Hey guys, thanks for calling me up. I'm out here in LA, so I have a lot of stories of house parties and situations like that. But one that comes to mind is we had an individual who booked through Airbnb, and he said that he was an influencer. And just on that merit alone, we kind of said, okay, he's vetted. We didn't ask for the rest of the guest list. This was early days in the company. And over the course of the night, we have the Ring doorbells in front of our properties. So we see everyone that comes in and out of the house. About 3 a.m, a lot of individuals were coming in and out of the house. The next morning, I come to the house at 8 a.m, and come to find out there's several different individuals that we were never told about that were at the house. We asked them to leave because these were not people that we were told about. And when we entered the house, there was mail from all the surrounding residences and houses in the area that they had taken. It was right around tax season. And they had taken all these individuals' mail. There was a counterfeit credit card making machine. It was just a horrible situation. And it's because we didn't ask enough questions. We didn't vet enough. So what we do now is we will get the entire guest list. We'll get their ID before check-in. And then at the actual check-in, they either meet one of our team members on site, or they're sending us a picture of themselves holding their ID in front of the property with the address visible. So we know that the individual who made the booking is the one checking into the property. And that's helped us a lot. And another huge thing for us is just to always ask questions. Who are you staying with? Who's going to be visiting you? What are the names of the individuals that will be visiting you over the course of your stay? And it turns a lot of guests off, but in the long run, it's protected us numerous times. Whenever someone doesn't want to give you more information, or they start getting defensive, or they can't get clear on what they're looking to do, it's usually a red flag for us. So I just wanted to say that. I've got a lot of stories. I've had parties go on at houses that we've had to shut down. I've had celebrity houses that I've shown people through, and individuals have snuck into the house while we're doing a showing. I've seen it all, and it's a great business to be a part of, but you just have to trust your gut and protect yourself, because as many great guests as that are out there, there's also people that you can't trust and you have to be careful with, and you just have to protect yourself. So thanks for letting me share.
Yeah, Matthew, that's awesome, man. And I think that learning lesson is so good. That's something that we learned the hard way as well. And I know a lot of people might be hearing that and saying like, oh, that sounds like a lot of extra steps for the guest. I might turn the guest off. But yeah, I mean, it's exactly what you said. If it's going to turn them off, they're probably not the right guest to stay in your house anyway. So the ones that it won't turn off will probably appreciate that and see that you have your stuff together, and that, you don't let just anyone in the house, and it'll help them feel a little bit safer as well. So I love that, Matthew. Thanks for sharing, man. All right, then Neil, yes, you're still up on stage. You're up next, brother.
Hey, I have actually 2 really good stories, just really quick. So the first story is a guest checked out. I got a call from the cleaner. Hey, the guest didn't return the key. So I messaged the guest. I was like, yeah, please return the key. He was actually local, and I actually checked his ID before check-in. And then the guest responded, hey, yeah, okay, sorry, I'm in a cab. I'm coming back to give you back the key. And then about a minute later, I get a call from the building manager saying, on the way out, your guest stole 5 packages and got in a cab and took off. So then I was like, okay, well, he's coming back to return the keys, so just call the cops, and cops will meet him there. So then So then I get back to the place. The cab pulls up. The guy gets out. He tries to give me keys. I'm like, no, just like step in this gate here. Right. So then he stepped into like the gated area in the front of the condo building. I like closed the gate. I'm like, don't move. You're being arrested. And then so he's like, oh, what for? And then I said packages. And then he actually like tried to like start wrestling me, which is kind of dangerous. And then the building manager came out and yelled at him like, stop, like we're both gonna kick your ass if you do anything. And then it was like a good 5-10 minutes, and then the cop showed up and took him away. So apparently he actually had a hammer in his back pocket, which is kind of dangerous. Like, leads me to believe I probably should have done that. I should have, if he really wanted to leave, I should have just let him leave. But that's kind of a funny story. The second most epic story that I have is my best 4-star review. So I had this guy checking out. My cleaner calls me, this guy hasn't checked out yet, all this stuff's here. So I call him. He's like, I thought I was checking out tomorrow. I'm like, no, checkout's today. So then he's like, okay, well, I'm at work now. I'll come home for lunch. And then so he came home. I actually drove there to see him out. And then he needed a place to stay. So I was like, okay, well, I have an extra place down the road. I'll give you a ride since you don't have a car. And he's like, oh, sure, that'll be fine. And then so I loaded all the baggage in my car. I drove him there, checked him in, right? And then after his 1-day stay, he gave me a 4-star review. And the 4 stars was on location. So he didn't like the location. It was about 5 blocks away from where he's actually staying. So it was just kind of a funny 4-star review story. That's the first time I've ever driven an Airbnb guest to check in. But yeah. And that's about it for me.
Interesting. Wow. Gotta love those guests that you do go the extra mile for, and then they don't even give you a 5-star review. Wow. Very interesting. I know Jim was going to be next, but it looks like he's on the phone. Got that phone icon up on his. I know Ellie also had a story. Ellie, did you want to jump in? Ellie might also be on the phone.
No, I couldn't. I was looking at other people's profiles, deep into it, and I had to press the back button 900 times. Good morning. Thanks for having me up. So my craziest Airbnb story, I think I did this on your podcast, Kyle, was I had this really amazing property in Old Town Scottsdale. And I was in Seattle setting up 2 new condos for some clients. And I get a call that, the door is completely broken. One of our glass doors are completely broken because these are gorgeous doors. You walk in, you have a smart pad and everything. It's really fancy. And the door is completely shattered because the guest came over from the club because it's across the street from all the nightclubs and was just hammered with 2 hookers or something like that. And I don't chastise anybody who chooses hookers. You do what's right for you in your life, and hookers are great, whatever. They do what's right for them. So be it, right? Not my style. And he's hammered. He just breaks the door of any build, because there's 11 doors lined up, all these different guests in each unit. And it was the other guest who had sent the message with their door, hey, I came back and my door was shattered, and there's some guy standing outside with these 2 girls. And that stupid guest that broke the door was the door over, forgot how to use a keypad while wasted, and just decided, yeah, you know what, brick works. So it was it's completely annoying and dumb, and we charged him a ton of money. Yeah, that's my craziest Airbnb story. So no, actually, the rest of it is we called the police. We're like, hey, man, like this guy's messing up our property, and we canceled the reservation like you should do in the case of anything like this. Like, it's at that point they're trespassing. If you cancel the reservation, you show Airbnb that the reservation is thus canceled. Then the police were like, we can't arrest him. I was like, why? We're like, he's sleeping inside, and we don't arrest sleeping people. I was like, are you kidding me right now?
So they only arrest conscious people for crimes. That's what they're saying.
Right. So like next time you see a policeman and you're like committed a crime, just fall asleep. Like, do the bear tactic.
Wow.
Don't move. Just lay on the ground.
In the fetal position. Yeah.
Just crying. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Sleeping, snoring loudly with like your drool spitting out, so they do not arrest you. It was so frustrating. But
wow.
Yeah.
So Ellie, I know you've been in and out of the group. We were also sharing learning lessons when we were sharing these stories. Was there anything that you can gather from learning from that situation?
Yeah, no, I mean, definitely like, don't make sure that you cancel the reservation and show the, Airbnb that you cancel the reservation. That's what I learned. But even though in that situation, it wasn't really applicable because the policeman just chose he didn't want to do anything about it. I think that was the biggest lesson learned there.
Cool. Well, thanks for sharing. Love that. I see some other mics flashing. I know Jim looks like is still on the phone. Let's get, looks like Rachel was flashing her mic, and then John after that.
Okay, so my story is about a property that I was representing in Tempe, Arizona. And it was, I won't even have time to explain how long and drawn out this specific scenario was, because it was 100 degrees outside, and the property owner and the, assistant to the property owner refused to allow the AC repairman to come in, the one that I had selected to help fix and remediate the issue. They had their own repairman who chastised and berated me over the phone, and he just would not show up. And my guests were so hot, and it got to 104 degrees. And I was just so livid with the way the property, owner was treating the guests. He felt as though he had ample time. He had the resources. His resources will come out when they want to come out. And he yelled at me. He berated me. And I just felt as though, at that time, and I ended up speaking with his wife about it as well. He was just over the top, just a different type of person and a different type of personality. And I remember as I was taking on that property, having that kind of weird feeling in my gut, thinking, is this property my brand? Is this for me? And you know what? I just jumped in and went for it. Never again. Not my brand, not my cup of tea. It was sort of a mix between a little bit of a frat party house, which is great, but that's just not my brand. I'm a family-friendly type of property. And so his property wasn't the best. It was a little bit on the trash outside, and we were trying to kind of remediate and save, but he did not want to put in the investment. So it was just such a harrowing task dealing with our guests who were suffering, and we're looking for accommodations to place them elsewhere. And I terminated my relationship with that landlord immediately. And so my lesson is, know your brand and stick to it. It's just not worth it straying from that. So that's my story.
Yeah, no, that's so good. And one thing that I know Rachel and I are in a mastermind together. One of the things that we talked about recently was your avatar property and your avatar owner. And so I'm sure there was a lot of things that you were able to learn from that, Rachel, to gather what your avatar looks like and what it now does not look like as well.
Absolutely. Yes. Thank you, Kyle.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks for sharing, Rachel. John, I saw you flashing your mic. You got a story for us?
Yeah, I have a story. It's not as crazy as some of the stories that everybody else told. And then I have an unrelated lesson learned. So the story is, this is about 2.5 years ago, maybe 3 years ago. I first got onto booking.com and I had my first guest coming to one of my properties, and I was really excited. You know, I was expanding outside of Airbnb and VRBO. It happened to be a group of, I guess, sailors from the Australian Navy. I don't know what you call it. And while the booking, this is a 2-bed, 2-bath condo, right? About 1,000 square feet. The booking was for 4 people. And at around midnight, I get a call saying, there are like 20 people going into your unit at the front desk of this condominium. And essentially they were, you know, it was like they're like 1 or 2 nights off, and they were just like trying to have like a raging party inside the 2-bedroom condo. They were throwing beer bottles off the balcony into the pool below where guests were swimming, other guests. So they were creating quite a ruckus. So we were able to call the police, you know, did everything, got them kicked out. So next day, my cleaning crew arrives, and apparently it was an orgy. And they found lots of very interesting sex paraphernalias and, you know, things like that inside the unit. So that was my weirdest, oddest story. Since then, I've learned, I guess one lesson learned is I've learned some of the settings to set in booking.com to discourage bad guests. And so that's something that is my secret weapon. The other lesson learned, which is not related to this that I wanted to share, is I use a tool called Turnover BNB for my cleaning management. And one of the things that it has is the guests can send, like go to a website and send when they have checked out early, so that my cleaning team can, you know without me having to text them and, you know, start cleaning earlier. But the cool thing is there's a feature that says, how would you rate your stay in that? And so it's getting feedback from the guests before they hit, you know, the Airbnb review. And what's been very interesting is the guests who've left me negative reviews, I think they feel that they've already reviewed me. So they've kind of, at least the past couple, have not left any negative reviews on the platform. But then the guests who do leave a good review, I send them, you know, it automatically sends a message saying, you know, please make sure you review us on Airbnb. And so we're kind of able to filter out some of the negative reviews and you know, maintain the higher reviews. So that's a little tip and trick that I found that I think is you know, good thing to have on your end. And you also know what they're thinking, and if there was truly a bad experience, then you can get out ahead of it and, you know, offer some concession or whatnot. So that's my little story.
That's good, John. Thanks for sharing, man. That is definitely a neat hack. I didn't know that Turnover BNB even had that feature, so that's cool to know. And don't sell your story short, man. That's pretty crazy. An orgy. I think most of us have not experienced an orgy, so that's definitely wow. Yeah, that's rough. Mac, I saw you flashing your mic as well.
Thanks, Kyle. How's it going? I have one. Is this about guest experiences, or could it be about anything related to your Airbnb business?
Anything you want, brother.
Okay. So as you know, I think I've shared quite a few times about like regulations in Seattle and how it might have impacted my business, and I never really shared that. Like I was planning to expand or move furniture basically to another city, so I did a lot of research on like which city that I wanted to like basically shut down like a fraction of our units and like pick out a new city. That city happened to be Dallas. And I took a trip and we got approved for about like 15 or 16 units. And in Seattle, I was shutting down, you know, basically when the leases ended on these properties. So I had one property where I was moving out of about 10 all at once. And so I had planned it. I had gotten approved, in Dallas. So the day, like the week that led up to this was it was crazy for me because I thought everything was golden. I wasn't 100% confident that Dallas was going to be the right market, but I kind of just spent all this time and energy. Like I flew down there and I brought my assistant with me, and we thought everything was golden. So fast forward like a couple days before, the property manager at this property that we got approved for 10 units, kind of furniture from Seattle all the way to Dallas. So I got a team together to like help me like get this like straightened out. And so when I found that out, I was like, okay, so what are we gonna do now? Are we still gonna go? And I was trying to figure out with my team, like, are we still gonna go? And then I'm like, screw it. So like, we're gonna do this. So what happened is I'm at this property in Capitol Hill, and we had, as I mentioned, 10 units, and the plan was to put all that furniture, take it out, put it in the U-Haul, and then get going on with our day. This was about the same time I had my daughter, Sophia. I'll get back to that in a second. Like, I was just a brand new dad. I was kind of like getting really comfortable being a dad and, just looking after my daughter grow and stuff like that. So, like, this was a very stressful moment. So I'm like I'm getting ready. I have the U-Haul, the team at the property, and then I get in the elevator at like 8:30 to like kind of start the day. And as I get in the elevator just stops working, and I'm like stuck in the elevator, like in the middle of a huge day of moving. So I'm just like, oh my God, like I just had a panic attack, and I'm sitting there freaking out. It lasted about an hour and a half where I couldn't do anything. And I'm just like thinking to myself, what the hell did I get myself into with this? Like everything is kind of going wrong. And then I essentially finally got out after an hour and a half, or no, like an hour and a half of just like basically having a panic attack, being stuck. I don't know if anyone's ever been stuck in an elevator. It's not like fun at all. Like it's never happened to me. So I didn't really know when I would get out. But when I did get out, I'm just like, you know what? Like, I don't think we should go to Dallas. So I pulled the plug on that move and kind of my expansion plan into like another market. And again, that was mainly when I went home and I was thinking to myself, like, I have a new daughter. Like, this is way too much stress for me to go to. I don't think like this makes sense right now. And so I basically said, let's not do that. And that ended up, to me, was one of the craziest stories because I was ready to try something in a new city and market, and that was because of regulations in Seattle. So, and yeah, that's basically my story.
That's like one of my biggest fears is getting stuck in an elevator. Anytime I feel like some sort of shift in an elevator, I'm like, uh-oh, what are we going to be stuck here for hours and hours? That had to be a very helpless feeling, Mac.
Oh, it was, because it's like today I'm moving actually, and I'm in a U-Haul right now as I speak and planning to do some moving. And so every time I do anything moving related and it involves an elevator, like I'm anxious. Like right now I'm super anxious. I don't know if you can hear my voice, but yeah. So anytime I'm moving and I think of an elevator, I'm just like nervous that it's going to shut down on me and screw up my whole plan.
Man, that's rough. I'm glad you're okay though. Jim, hey, I know you were flashing your mic a little bit earlier than we saw the phone icon. Are you back, brother? Did you want to share a story?
Yes, sir. Sorry about that. A little homeowner phone call. My crazy story, just a run-of-the-mill Airbnb crazy guest party. This is a couple of years ago. Easter weekend was over 420. Mistake number one. I really didn't have my ears up to that. And we had a house. It was our very first reservation for this particular homeowner. Really nice house, pretty close to downtown Indianapolis, Lucas Oil, right next to a pretty good sized church that had about like a 30-car parking lot that it was getting ready for Easter. Anyway, long story short, guest booked the house it was a sister weekend, just like 3 sisters getting into town. Next thing you know, pretty late that evening, I get called from an unknown number. I normally just send this voicemail. I get triple called by that number. It's somebody who works with the church, and they said that they're trying to set up for Easter service the next morning, but their entire 30-plus car parking lot is overflowing and full, along with all the street parking. I'm like, oh my gosh. So next thing you know, I get calls from neighbors, and we arrive at the house, and there's no less than 7 cop cars there. People just busting out windows of the house, like just scattering. And what had happened was this group had booked 3 Airbnbs simultaneously for this like a college graduation, like recreating a Project X type thing. Every sort of paraphernalia or house damage you can imagine. And so we get there, and so we're, very long story, so we get everything cleared out, and I guess these people ended up like knowing that they'd get busted. They ended up like going to, after the fact, we found out that they had actually booked other Airbnbs to go to if their primary one got shot down, like a plan A and a plan B, plan C type thing. So anyway, so me and one of my buddies, we're actually, I think he's in the audience. We're just, it's about like 1, 2 in the morning. We're like mopping up all this crazy stuff off the floor. The homeowner is just like freaking out, and calls her husband. Finally gets there, and he's this former cop and whatever, and he's like really freaking out. I mean, yelling at me and stuff like that. And so we're all just mopping, slaving away. like super early Easter morning. Next thing you know, we have like people trying to get in the house. Of course, they've like manually locked it, and I'm just like, I have like sweat dripping from me, and I'm like mopping up all this crap. And then I hear this like gun, like, he's like, "Get behind me, boys." It's like the homeowner pulls out a gun that I didn't even know he had. He's like approaching the door, and I'm like, what world is going on? And so what had happened is that so many people had gotten this just massive Facebook invitations party, and like a lot of them didn't even know that it was canceled. And so people are still showing up to this house as the address, like, like yelled at him, like, "No, get the hell off my property," all this stuff. It was just surreal, completely out of the twilight zone. And so, you know, a couple of Airbnb claims later, and meeting with, they had to pull up they had to send over an insurance claim person from Airbnb, and probably our largest damage claim to date. It was about $20,000 of house damages that Airbnb paid out, surprisingly, very, very quickly. And but yeah, it was just a crazy night none of us will ever forget.
Wow. Well, two thank gods there. Thank God that Airbnb paid out quickly, and thank God you had a homeowner with a gun hidden away and ready to protect you guys. That's crazy, Jim. I think the only person on stage that hasn't shared a story yet, and I know he's got to have one, Mr. Jay Massey. Jay, are you there and able to share a crazy story?
Oh, I'm here.
Let's do it.
I've enjoyed listening mostly because I've got too many crazy stories, and yet at the same time, I've been thinking this entire time, even with all these crazy stories, it's not going to stop anyone from getting it started in the business because we know it works, and I just think it's funny. But these crazy, in fact, how many of you who've shared a story before doing this, and if you hadn't done this, would not believe the stories you have heard? Flash your mics. I'm curious. Like you would not. You're like in your head. You're like, that's not possible. No, it's literally the way we live things. Man, I good Lord, I'm trying to like which one, what year, what building. Which is to say that there's when you are hosting lots of individuals, you just get lots of crazy things that you just don't expect. For example, the one that just came to mind, Long Beach, California. And it was just very ironic how all this went down. The person made a reservation, and it was no big deal. Everything looked fine until they wanted to start extending their time or things. There was something about they needed to make a change to the reservation right as they were arriving and wanted to change. And when we asked for payment, she said something to the effect of, "My manager doesn't let me handle money, so you'll have to talk with him." And when we checked the reservation, it's a guy who's made the reservation, but there's a girl, and we're like, okay. And she said, "My manager." What does that mean? And really long story short, we eventually get her manager on the phone. Her manager is actually her pimp, period. And I'm like, I see now what's going on. And he was holding steady with the manager. Okay, he wasn't trying to break character at all. But it was just one of those times where I was actually the one. I wasn't doing much anyway, so I picked it up and was listening. And then, long story short, because I got the inclination that what was going down, one of my standard tactics is to go over and fix, be the maintenance guy. I'll be the maintenance guy almost anytime. But it just so happens that after she arrived, there actually was a maintenance issue. And what was hilarious is that because I had suspected that, there was some sort of sex work going down, I had actually already called Airbnb and was on my way. And as I was approaching the property, I had the Airbnb guy on the phone, but they didn't know that. And when I knocked on the door, being the maintenance guy coming to fix the lock, she was actually on the phone with her manager. But what was hilarious to me is when she opened the door, her customer ran, because it's a studio apartment. So when you open the door, you see everything. He ran to the bed and dug under the covers. Like, I didn't see that. And I am now in the situation where I have to pretend like I'm just pretending like I don't know what's going down. And really long story short, the guy when I fixed the door, move on, and the Airbnb guy was laughing right along with me. But most ironically was the fact that I had just come from the Long Beach City meeting about Airbnb and sex work happening in short-term rentals. And I'm just like, oh Lord, I am not saying anything today. It was just strange just how all of that came down. But to say that I've been put in some weird positions with people and just how these things go, it's amazing. That one it's still funny to me because he literally, like a little kid, ran into the bed and pulled his hand under the covers. Oh my God, it was great. You had to be there. I wish I had a photo. I really do.
That's amazing. Yeah, I love that. Like, he didn't see you, and like he's not going to see that. You're not going to see that large lump under the bed. That's amazing. Wow. All right. Well, guys, we're coming up at the end here, and I wanted to save my story for last because it's a story that I think will be pro Airbnb, whereas some of these have been like, oh my gosh, I'm scared about Airbnb now. And so my story is actually during COVID, when all this stuff went down and we didn't know if travel was going to be allowed, and we didn't know if Airbnb was going to start blocking people from being allowed to book because they were canceling all these reservations. We got proactive with about half of our units and said, let's put half of them on month-to-month rentals. And we noticed that the big ones were not getting rented out on, we were trying Furnish Finders, Facebook Marketplace, Craigslist. We were desperate. We were wanting to get as many bookings as possible. I was still relatively young in the business, so I didn't know about some of the other opportunities that I could get some longer term bookings. But long story short, we noticed that some of these bigger places, our 3 and 4 bedrooms, were not getting booked out at rates that would make sense for us. So we had to resort to month on each room. And so now we had like strangers basically living in each room, and they were paying well, and it seemed like it was going really well, and everything seemed to be awesome. I would check in with them and say, is everyone getting along? Yeah, everyone's great. Well, after a month, within a week, both of the places that we were doing room by room, one of the roommates had a domestic violence situation in both houses, 2 different houses, 2 different police officers showing up for 2 different domestic violence situations, both of which, by the way, was initiated by the female, which I come to find out in doing some more research. The majority of some domestic violence situations, at least in our area, are actually initiated by females, which is, I did not expect that. But long story short, I had to get involved on both of them. I had to talk to police officers. I had to talk to all of the roommates. I had to do all of that. And it was one of those moments where I was like, this is why Airbnb and short-term rentals done the right way is king over anything else. The long-term renters, the people who you find on, these random places, or, if you're going to have them, as a regular tenant, man, it sucks. And so being a regular landlord, it was solidified for me that I did not want to be a regular landlord. And for that reason, I have put everything back onto Airbnb and had a lot less headaches, which at the end of the day, too, here in some of the places like California, like we're in, where there's moratoriums and people being given excuses not to pay rent. That's why short-term rentals and Airbnb is absolutely king. So with that being said, it looks like everyone on stage has shared their story, and I want to thank everyone for doing so. I want to thank all the moderators. I want to thank everyone for listening in. I would also like to invite anyone in the next, in actually 2 hours from now, I'm going to be having on my Facebook page called Airbnb Masterminds. You can just Google Airbnb Masterminds on Facebook. We're going to be having Mark Simpson do a live video with us talking about more direct bookings, how you can take control of your business by getting more direct bookings and making more money. And I think that would be a great opportunity for anyone to listen into. He is the founder of Boostly, which is helping tons of people to be able to get more direct bookings. I would love to see you there and for you to learn from Mark. But in the meantime, all the moderators, thank you so much for jumping on, sharing your crazy stories and your awesome learning lessons. And this week was the short-term rentals lunch break, sharing your craziest stories. Next week, we'll have a different topic, same time. We'll see you then. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Scott.
Thank you.